Everyone. Today I'm going to talk briefly about chapters 9 and 10. Chapter 9 is about gender, and the bulk of this chapter talks about gender roles. It actually starts with a conversation about a gay couple and sort of the different ways that they handle gender roles within their relationship. And that it's very difficult when you have two men or two women to sort of hold to those typical gender roles that are assigned based on societal demands. I find the conversation a little bit offensive. I actually have a lot of gay friends, and a lot of times they'll ask my lesbian friends, well, which one of you is the husband and which one of you is the wife? The reality is they do what they have to do in their household, and I don't think they necessarily stop to think which is a husband-like duty and which is a wifely duty. So I think it's kind of interesting that they start with that conversation. What we know is that gender really refers to the behaviors and meaning that society puts upon those particular roles. So that being male or female gender roles is different than the sex necessarily that you were born to. And that our gender is shaped by historical, environmental, economic, and political forces, and most importantly, cultural forces of that particular area. So we learn these gender roles very early on as children. As little boys, they wear blue, you play with trucks. Girls wear pink and play with dolls. While it's not necessarily that straight and narrow and, drawn out now as it used to be, it still is very much that way. Little girls are told to be sweet and good girls, and boys are taught to be strong and to suck it up and take it. And so the roles we ascribe to males is masculine and to females feminine. And throughout our lives, that's very much how we are seen in our male and female roles. Our book makes the point that today the concept of masculine and feminine is more fluid than ever. You might see a woman that has very traditional masculine roles. Maybe she's even smoking a cigar. It's not really necessarily unusual in this day and age to see that. So it's really about how that perception or how that information or that vision, if you will, is received by the other individual. And so you may see stay-at-home dads instead of stay-at-home moms, men who do the cooking, women who do the traveling and actually do most of the work. They also talk about sex being biology, how you're born. And for the most part, with the exception of gender reassignment surgery, sex is unchangeable. Gender roles, on the other hand, can be changeable and can flux with a different society or in different relationships that you might have. But gender roles really are about cultural assignments and about social construction. Gender roles are tasks that are assigned by the culture to the specific sexes. They also talk about gender stratification, which was a word I had not heard of before, but they talk about sort of the different rewards and how they are unequally distributed amongst men and women. And we know this, that, for example, as far as women have come, still women have not achieved equal pay. There still are more advances that need to happen in this country in order for women to achieve that status, that even though we see women taking more masculine roles, that in fact that still hasn't happened. There's also discussion about patriarchies versus matriarchies. In this country, we are largely considered a patriarchy, and that means that men hold most of the political power and decision-making authority, whereas a matriarchal society would be just the opposite, where women have more say in the roles. And you'll see that still in Congress, there's relatively few women. We've never had a female president, for example. But if you look on the discussion post, you'll find that there's at least one example of a matriarchal society in China that'll kind of make you think about how our roles are assigned in this country. Despite the gains that women have had, you'll still find that in the United States, half of the households that live below the poverty line are headed by women. Some of that may be because of pay inequity still, or access, or what we call the glass ceiling. In other words, women CEOs, no matter how far they go, still can only earn so much compared to their male counterparts. And we know globally that, in fact, that's the case as well. Households headed by women tend to live more often in poverty than those headed by men. So despite the advances for women's rights, we still have a long way to go. So as we go on to chapter 10 and we talk about social orientation, you'll notice on the discussion board, actually on the week 9 information, that there's a YouTube video that's sort of a spoof about how gays and lesbians are treated and the questions they get asked, like which one of you is the husband, which one of you is the wife. And that really has a lot to do with lack of knowledge about sexual orientation, as well as the roles that gay couples might have together. They talk a little bit about coming out, and that is an individual's proclaiming that they are gay, and how that's sort of a coming of age. In the past, that's something that didn't happen, often still doesn't even happen until adulthood, or until the individual feels safe, or in a community of people that they feel love and respect them no matter what. But we know that there's a great deal of differences in cultures, that there are, even in the United States, gay and lesbians who cannot come out to their family, or if they do, they are disowned by their family. And that for those cultures that do accept their gay and lesbian children, for example, that sometimes it takes some re-education and acceptance on the family's part. But I do know a fair number of individuals whose families have never been accepting, which is a shame. And that may be why the suicide rate for gay and lesbian teens is as high as it is. So it's important to be aware that for some families, this is a very large challenge, and it presents a difficulty for the children as well. Hate crimes are also an issue in our gay and lesbian community. There was an example in Dallas just last week. Someone was killed because they were gay. And so in this day and age, we still see that's very much of an issue. The book talks about sexual orientation, and that's really the pattern ways a person views and expresses the sexual component of their personality. We know there's homosexuality, heterosexuality, bisexuality, asexuality, which was a new one for me, and asexuality is just sort of the indifference to have sexual attraction, or just no sexual attraction at all. But of course, in our United States, still, and in the world, heterosexuality is still the dominant. They also talk about Kinsey and his landmark survey, in which he learned that people don't necessarily fit so well into the categories that we want to assign them as heterosexual, homosexual, bisexual, that there's a lot of in-betweens, and that people sort of are in different opposites of where that spectrum falls. So there's a great variation in where people sort of ascribe themselves to be sexually. And that was many years ago when he conducted this survey. So imagine now, with our culture being more accepting of differences, how that might change. They also talk about the importance of gay activism and associations. There's a lot of associations that are there to support gays and lesbians and transgendered individuals as well, and to also advocate for them both on a personal, social level as well as a political level. And of course, if you've seen anything in the news media, you'll know that, with marriage equality passing, what a huge step forward that was. And interestingly, of course, there's still a lot of discussion about how to overturn that court ruling, and some people that are still not accepting of it. And for that reason, I also included for you all, even though it's not in our book, a discussion about homophobia or fear of people that are gay, just because I feel like that's an issue that you need to be aware of, and because so many people are still victims of hate crimes. There's a very small discussion about individuals who were transgendered. Transgendered individuals are born, let's say, female, but wish to actually or feel that they are more male. So they sort of transcend not only the biological, but also the gender roles that are assigned to them as individuals. Now we see that on TV. We have jazz, and it's much more open than it used to be. But my experience with transgendered individuals is that it's a very difficult life for them. If they are lucky enough to have a supportive family, even then, we know the suicide rates are very, very high. And so it's certainly a very difficult life for those individuals. And it also challenges us to think about the difference between sex and gender, and for us to consider people, just people, who they are, not necessarily as male or female. We make it so difficult for people to try to fit into whatever those roles are. So I hope that as you work through the assignments for this week, that you'll get a chance to think about some of these things. I know that some of you may have lived in small towns, and so these will be new concepts for you. But I, again, appreciate your openness and your willingness to learn this information. Until next time for Chapter 11, I will see you later.